By our recruiting office, and it truly is a team effort. We're really excited about this group. A couple things have added. Certainly the number of years that our staff has been there and been out in areas. We launched in a new area, the state of Texas, and we had some ties and some familiarity with Texas, and that proved to be fairly bountiful. But a couple things, I think, we as a recruiting philosophy do not get into ratings on stars and things like that. We go by our ratings, but I can tell you that the competition that we encountered in recruiting some of these guys, they had a lot of options, and so a lot of the yeses and the confirmations we believe came from, first of all, 3 consecutive winning seasons. Certainly the McMurray High Altitude Training Facility, it set us apart from a lot of our peers. And there's a real buy-in. And the other thing that really occurred was our players, our current players, really are truly our best recruiters. And so the ball's moving forward. We're certainly excited about it. It was a heck of an effort by a lot of guys. I know personally, I feel like I'm rode hard and put up wet. I know our assistant coaches are as well. But this is a great capstone. Now we'll need to come up and find some more players as we go. It's interesting, everybody has asked how people have handled the early signing date. Last year in FBS, there was over, I think, 2,100 roughly players who signed early. This year, that's numbered down to 1,500. So I think everybody's trying to find exactly how to handle this. But we feel like we hit our watermark, and we're real well poised with the group that we have up there. I think some needs that we're going to continue to search for. Certainly, a quarterback is going to be important for us. I think a running back is going to be important for us. A bigger tight end will be important for us. A defensive tackle, but we're on the inside feeling really good about where we're at. We're in a great position, and so I want to say thanks once again to our assistant coaches and Justin and the recruiting office, and it really was we're really pleased with where we're at. So at this time, I'll open up to questions from the media or anybody else who's here. So questions. Yes, Robert.
It's great. Were there, like you said yesterday, there's always surprises down the stretch. Were there a lot of surprises, good or bad today, or did everything kind of go as
you know what? It was probably about where we thought. There's always going to be, a couple guys that commit that you go, well, I didn't know how they saw us, and then there's going to be a couple that change their mind. But it was pretty minimal, and I think we've got a system built in place to handle the slack both ways.
Just a quick follow-up. I know you recruit Colorado really well. Still time. Do you feel good about what you're doing in Colorado? Do you think you might get some guys, or was it just really one of those years where maybe it's not quite as heavy as it was?
I think there's, it's going to sound like somewhat of a boastful statement. I don't know if there's a staff that calls through the state of Colorado more thoroughly than we do, and we certainly have done that. There's going to be some guys that we'll continue to look at and actively seek. And so some years there's going to be more players that fit the Wyoming profile than others. Even though we're going to go in the back half, I don't think you'll see us sign as many, but we're going to continue. There's a couple guys that we still have on our radar that are in the state of Colorado.
What was your most, I'm sorry,
Over here, I'll come back.
Coach, you talk about, looks like you went after some size and versatility on the offensive side of the football. Was size at receiver and on the offensive line really important to you guys this time around?
Well, we've got a template, and certainly as we've progressed with our offense, the size and the stature is really going to be important. When Justin was going through the tape with the receivers, one thing that we were looking for is a competitive guy to go up and catch the football, and certainly size comes into play. I think we identified those guys, and you saw them come up with contested plays. And then what we also feel like is important to do, and I addressed it about in the middle of the year, to have much more of a competitive nature, and guys who are going to finish things off and be competitive. And so I think we've identified that.
What were your most pressing needs coming into the early sign period that you felt like you addressed?
A couple things. We felt like we had to get some guys in particularly at the safety position. We've recruited well there, though, but when you lose 2 seasoned players like that, we're going to need to continue to get that. Corner was going to be an important position, defensive ends, and then 2 linebackers. And we feel like in the Mountain West play, nickel was going to be important. Offensively, we felt like it was going to be critical for us to get a couple guys at that H position that could really stretch the field. And so between Traden and Christensen, you know, we feel like we've been able to do that, and so we're certainly excited about that.
So with Parker, you guys recruited him the whole time as an H-back, right?
Yes.
What is he? How do you feel like he fits into that position? And
Well,
could he get a look at running back?
We don't think so. You know, he's about 6'2". He's about 205 pounds. He runs 4.6, and he's an explosive athlete. So, you know, between Trayton and Parker, we feel like those are guys that we're going to need to be able to do some athletic things. You know, a couple of years ago, we had Jacob Hollister here, and Jacob was one of those guys that could really do some special things, and we feel like we can get that with those two guys. Yes, Robert.
I'm curious, obviously, you still have offers out there and stuff. Now, as you go into this second process, is it kind of let the dust settle and see what's out there, not necessarily start over or still continue on? Guys, you have offers too, or a little bit of both. How do you kind of approach it now?
Well, a lot's going to come about what happens today. I mean, there's going to be certain guys that felt like they were going to get signed that are not signed. There's certainly a template that we have. You know, we're going to kind of hone in on our needs that we have, and certainly make sure we find guys that are above the line. We've already got a game plan in place that Mace's done a really good job with, and so we'll begin to reevaluate. But there are a couple guys that, you know, we've talked to and said, okay, you know, if this goes in the second signing period, we're going to still recruit you. And I think that comes into play on how everybody's handling this signing period. You know, last year I think there was an urgency, was a newness that, okay, I want to sign early. Now I think you're going to find more and more guys look around, and so we'll continue to recruit those guys. I think that there'll be a couple guys that will pop up, but there's not going to be a whole lion's share of guys that all of a sudden we're starting from scratch.
You mentioned defensive tackle as a need. How pressing is that, given you lost some veteran presence in that middle?
It's always going to be important for us to build our defense with defensive tackles. We feel like with NAP we got one. We had spec'd out in our matrix to take two, and so we'll take a hard look to see if we can find one. We're encouraged by what's out there right now that we'll find one more, but I think we've hit our baseline with the exception of one. Yes.
Okay, you guys have got some guys transferring out of the program. Could you sign more than 25 and count some back, or would that do anything to affect your scholarship?
We're choosing not to do that. You know, and the whole transfer game in college football, everybody perceives it differently. I think it's part of college football. We're always disappointed when some players choose to leave our program, but we always, you know, want to wish them the very best. And this is just part of the nature. I think we're probably on the low end as far as the guys that are exiting. But as far as the gamemanship, I think you're going to hit some heavy ebbs and flows, accounting forward and backwards and things like that. And so that's where we're looking at 24 to 25 guys. And you know, for us to be at 18 right now, we feel like we're in a really good position. Yes.
Does it really signing period help, say, the schools at the Wyoming level, and that you can identify what you're short of after you recruit?
Well, we think it does. I certainly think it benefits the student athlete. You know, some of these guys get badgered and they commit and decommit, and I think it also has some coaches pump the brakes as far as when they're really going to tender some offers. We feel like we've been ahead of the curve. You know, our MO is to be a little bit more methodical. Some schools will throw out just tons of offers, and they're really that's less than honest. Their approach is to say you've got an offer, and really it's just like monopoly money. It's not real. And so we go through a vetted process, and so when we make an offer, we're going to assume that young man's going to take it. And so therefore, the early signing date is really beneficial for us because, you know, the gamemanship is over. Here's an offer. Here's the paper that's coming. We want you to sign. And so we do a great deal of work, not only in the spring, but in the summer. But we work a lot in fall. And a lot of our coaches were out in person. I was out in person a lot, and so we feel like the early signing date is advantageous. It also helps cut costs. You're not running around the country babysitting and things like that. So I know some schools were disappointed with the early signing date, but it's something that is here. It's here to stay, and we feel like it's an advantage for the Wyoming Cowboys. Other questions? I will be available individually. I want to say thanks again to our assistant coaches, their wives, the recruiting office. Thanks for those who are attending today. You know what, as we build our program, if we keep on stacking consistent classes together, you're going to see a departure from the ebbs and flows, and that's what we're in hopes that we have here today. So I'll be around a little bit if anybody has any questions. That concludes our press conference.